Oh, it's fucking horse beef, baby. What's going on? Today, what I'm bringing you is my rankings for the best knockouts of 2024. The one I've been looking forward to the most, maybe aside from ranking the best fights of the year. But this one is very simple, to the point. Just rank these knockouts based on which one is the most impressive, most violent. Really, I don't know what the criteria is for ranking a great knockout. Does it have a lot to do with the quality of opponent, or is it more to do with the knockout itself? I'm not really too sure, and I haven't really pondered this of what I think is the best knockout of the year. So I say we just get into it now and see where things take us, man. I'm sure I don't have to explain what each tier means, right? These are just simply all the best knockouts of the year, right? So all of the knockouts that I consider to be the greatest to take place in 2024, we're just going to rank them accordingly. D, C, B, A, right? They're all great in their own right, but D is just for the lesser of the greatest knockouts of the year. Still some of the greatest knockouts of the year, regardless of where they're ranked, right? And let's just start things off with one that will sadden a lot of people and bring up some PTSD flashbacks, I can only assume. Ilia Toporia's knockout over Max Holloway. Now, as things stand, I'm going to put it in A tier because the knockout itself, right? It's not a crazy knockout. It's crazy because it was against Max Holloway, but at the same time, the nature of the knockout, the way that Ilia Topuria set it all up, right? The right hand that stunned Max, the body work, like beautiful combinations while Max is against the fence to piece him up a little bit more, lands a couple more shots, lands a perfect left hook, drops Max Holloway, and just the novelty of a Max Holloway knockout propels this into A tier. I don't think it's knockout of the year, but it's pushing the boundaries just based off the fact that he did it against probably the fighter with the greatest chin in UFC history. Maybe now that goes to Marvin Vettori, since the Max Holloway chin has been cracked now. Then we have Joaquin Buckley versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Now, it's a crazy knockout, right? Just leapt like a fucking gazelle, or like a prime Mike Tyson, left his feet to land that right hook flush on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in a fight where he was losing. So it's also a comeback knockout, right? And it is a novelty to see Wonderboy Thompson knocked out by anybody, really. So I do rate this one in pretty high regard, but at the same time, as a 40-year-old Wonderboy, I'll put this one in C tier for now. For me, the fact that it was a pretty nice comeback knockout and he really pulled that one out of the fire, because in my opinion, he was on his way to losing a very clear 30-27 decision against Wonderboy Thompson at that point, but he pulled it out, so I have to give him extra marks for that alone. Then we have Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill, and it's a very simple knockout, right? It's just a left hook crossed with a shovel uppercut, right? Weird trajectory on that shot. It was pretty much the first shot, significant shot at least, that Pereira landed all fight. The emoting, the reaction from Jamal Hill just looking up at Alex Pereira, emoting on him, was hilarious. And it's just a one-shot knockout, man. And, we're a sucker for those. It was the main event of UFC 300, the biggest card of 2024 and maybe of all time. So I would say this one is deserving of B tier as far as the best knockouts of the year go. And then we have Manel Kape versus Bruno Silva. Now, this one I'm going to put in B tier because the knockout itself isn't super impressive, but the performance from Manel Kape and the whole sequence leading up to the knockout is just beautiful. So the knockout itself isn't great. It's just the nature in which he did it and the style in which he was able to pull it off with. But if this was, like I said in yesterday's video, if this was based off performances alone, he's potentially getting put up here in performance of the year. But as far as the knockout itself, I will say, you know what? I'm not even going to rank him at B tier. I'm going to rank it at, the style behind it though. And Bruno Silva's no joke either. Yeah, I'm going to put this one at B tier just as far as the knockout goes. Then we have Bahamondes versus Manuel Torres. Took place at UFC Noche. Just a beautiful pull right hand down the middle. Rocks him, finishes him. I would say this is one of the more beautiful right hands anyone landed all year. Just a thing of beauty, just out of range. And he was landing it at will at one point. It was just a matter of time, and he did find the shot. It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I'm going to put it in B tier as well. I think it's a great knockout. Then we have Bruno Ferreira against Dustin Stoltzfus. The spinning elbow, disgusting, brutal. I think he shattered. I swear he shattered Dustin Stoltzfus's orbital bone after this one. And the fact that Dustin even came back to fight again in 2024 after that brutal knockout and some of the injuries he sustained, and not only come back to fight in 2024, but come back to win in 2024 and pick up finishes of his own. Beast, and just even absorb a shot like that without dying is crazy, man. A tank like Bruno Ferreira throwing a spinning elbow like that. And he was throwing multiple of them, man. He was just spamming him out there, and he eventually landed it. It's a beautiful knockout. I'll put it in B tier as well. I think it's a fantastic knockout. Then we get into the placeholder, of course, for knockout of the year. Justin Gaethje against Max Holloway, or it should be the other way around. But yeah, the knockout itself is just a right hand on the chin, but for it to happen in the middle of a BMF title fight, from the chin, Justin Gaethje in the very last second of the fight, the high that moment produced is really unmatched in the knockout itself. I mean, it's arguably the greatest knockout of all time, right? Not necessarily the knockout itself, but all the circumstances, the nature of it, beautiful, 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 unforgettable. Like I said, one of the greatest moments in MMA history. As things stand, this will be the knockout of the year, but I feel like everyone's going to rank it as knockout of the year. So I don't know. There's a contrarian side of me that wants to knock it down, but who knows how things go? Because I haven't really considered what the best knockout of the year is. I just know that as things stand, it's 100% Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. But maybe we'll come to a different conclusion as things go along here. Then we get into JDM versus Gilbert Burns. Now I'll say this is a solid. It's a solid C tier knockout. I'll say similar reasons to why the Joaquin Buckley and Wonderboy knockout is in C tier is because the knockout itself isn't great. I mean, yes, he did catch Gilbert Burns with a beautiful knee, but it's also the fact that he pulled this one out the fire because he was on his way to losing this fight too. He pulled it out, third round, beautiful knee, great ground and pound, great knockout. There's no argument from anybody that this isn't a fantastic knockout, but I think C tier for that one. Then we get into Li Jingliang against, Carlos Prates against Li Jingliang. This is a disgusting knockout. The left hook, right? He's throwing 1-2s, right? Everything going down the middle. Then he, for the knockout shot, right? Jab, left hook instead of the cross right down the middle, changes the trajectory, lands on the chin, and just sleeps Li Jingliang. He's the first one to ever sleep Li Jingliang. So another iron chin cracked has to propel this one for me. It's one of the best knockouts of the year, and I would put it right up there with Ilia Topuria against Max Holloway, just in the fashion he did it, dominant from beginning to end, and to find that shot, brutal, brutal, brutal to see the iron chin of Li Jingliang not only get cracked, but to see him get slumped like that. It's a novelty. And it was a beautiful knockout. Incredible shot to find. We then get into Sean Woodson against Padilla. Now, this is one of the more recent ones on this list, but there honestly are a couple of knockouts from the Tampa Bay card on this because that card was just ripe with beautiful knockouts. But I would say as far as best knockouts of the year goes, it's worthy of being represented here. It's worthy of being spoken of, but it's only worthy of D tier as far as I'm concerned. Although the combination was beautiful, right? The uppercut, left hook behind it, walks him down, right hook, left hook, I believe, drops him, finishes him. Beautiful, beautiful boxing from Sean Woodson. Love watching him fight. Then we get into Dan Ige against Andre Fili. Beautiful right overhand, and then just one shot stands over him. One more shot for good measure. Completely puts Andre Fili out. Brutal, brutal knockout. I'm a huge fan of this one. I would say B tier for this one, 100% B tier. Then we have Muslim Salikov against San Kanan. Now, this is one that I actually think competes with Max Holloway's knockout over Justin Gaethje. Just the pure style of it, a perfectly executed wheel kick, right? Which is a novelty. You don't see it very often. A spinning wheel kick to even land in the first place, but to score a clean KO like this is a top 3 knockout of the year for me. I'm actually going to rank it even above the Topuria knockout over Holloway because of the novelty of it and just the king of kung fu at the age of 40 landing spinning wheel kick KOs. Just inject it all into my veins. I need some more of that, man. Like, I'm gonna be chasing that dragon the rest of my life, man. I'm gonna be chasing the high of seeing the king of kung fu land spinning wheel kicks for the rest of my life. That's how hyped I was by that knockout. One of the best of the year, 100%, and happened on arguably, aside from UFC 300, the best card of the year, which is awesome. Then we get into Jean Silva against Charles Jourdain. It's always nice to see a fellow Canadian man get KO'd, right? It's great. We love to see it over here in Canada. We love to see our own get knocked out, apparently. It's great. It happened a lot this year, by the way. Yeah, Jean Silva, beautiful uppercut. Just the whole performance leading up to it, styling on Charles Jourdain, made it look easy, and the knockout shot was beautiful. And we had rarely even seen Charles Jourdain seriously hurt up to this point in the first place, so that does add some points to it. But I would say that as far as the knockout itself goes, it's not over the highest level competition in the world. I do feel like it was a mismatch, just considering what we know now about John Silva. That fight was absolutely a mismatch, but a very impressive knockout nonetheless from Jean Silva. Then we get Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint-Denis. I'm going to put it in A tier. Another one of my favorite knockouts of the year. Does it have a lot to do with the fact that it was Dustin Poirier and he was being counted out in that fight, and that just made the knockout that much more satisfying? Yeah, it might have something to do with it, but I just think the entire knockout sequence, the left hand that he landed, right, little touching left hand, rolls underneath with the right hook, lands perfectly, the most perfect right hook you'll ever see in your entire life, drops Benoit Saint-Denis, and then the one big left hand on the ground for good measure, just to really put a stamp on things, was beautiful, and it's one of my favorite knockouts of the year, and I think 100% has to be A tier. Then we get into, oh man, Steve Erceg against Matt Schnell. This knockout is gorgeous. The only thing that docks some points for this one, like I would say, as far as a perfect left hook, and I'm a sucker for a perfect left hook, or just a left hook in general, I'm a sucker for it. And Steve Erceg throws one of the best left hooks in the game right now, and that is one of the most perfect left hooks you will ever see landed in your entire life. The only thing that keeps it away from being A tier for me is the fact that he landed it on Matt Schnell. So the knockout itself is great, but Matt Schnell has a glass chin at 125, and this result was always going to happen, but Steve Erceg did it in about as impressive fashion as you could have asked for. But as I said, the glass chin of Matt Schnell made this result very predictable. So I'll rank it in B tier, although the style of it is enough to even put it up in A. But I'm going to rank it in B. Then we get into, oh man, Esteban Ribovic against Terrence McKinney. Now we get another chinny fighter in Terrence McKinney getting knocked out. But this was the high kick, man. The way that Ribovic set it up, I believe it was the right high kick, lands right on the chin, and the face at Terrence McKinney, right, it looked like he was suffering from rigor mortis, and his face was just stiffened up. Looked like he had just this cheesy ass smile on his face. He loved getting knocked out by Ribovic, right? Even he was impressed post mortem at that beautifully executed high kick from Ribovic. This is a crazy knockout. I would say this one is potentially B tier for me. I would say it's just B tier. Same reason for the Erceg. The knockout itself is incredible, but it's against a super chinny fighter, arguably one of the chinniest fighters in the UFC, and Terrence McKinney, right? Just a glass cannon. Oh man. Then we have Vinicius Oliveira versus Bernardo Sopage. This fight was a banger. I actually left it out of my greatest fights of the year list, and it could have made it there, honestly. But the knockout, man, the knockout has to be spoken about. I think he lands like a nice left hook, right overhand combination, walks him down, chases him towards the cage, and lands one of the cleanest, most brutal flying knees you will ever see. This is another one that contends with Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje for being the best knockout of the year. I would say, as far as the shot itself goes, maybe alongside Muslim Salikov's knockout of Song Kanan, I'm hard-pressed to find a shot just in a vacuum, right? The shot itself, that's more impressive than this flying knee. So, yeah, I would say just as far as the visual of it, this is arguably the best knockout of the year, but it's just not the same as a Max Holloway Justin Gaethje, but A tier nonetheless. Then we have Alex Pereira against Yuri Prochazka. Beautiful, beautiful left high kick, right? Just a beautiful switch kick, lands with the foot. I believe broke the toe off of Yuri Prochazka's head, and then to see him slumped like that. Like, he was knocked out the first time by Alex Pereira, but he wasn't really put out completely. This was just a completely different story. Even looks like he broke Yuri Prochazka's war hair, which made me very, very sad. The little bow from Prochazka as well. It's just such a sad scene, and maybe I just have bitter thoughts about this knockout because I just hate seeing Yuri Prochazka get knocked out, but it was so impressive nonetheless. And to do it to Yuri Prochazka like that, right? Someone who's been very difficult to finish, right? For so many fighters. It's a B tier knockout for me. Then we have Ilia Topuria against Volkanovski. Another fantastic knockout that has to be, and I'm going to put it right beside his knockout of Holloway, and just to really think about it, man. I seem to forget sometimes. Like, I know I ranked Ilia Topuria as the fighter of the year, but when you just see the visuals side by side, knocking out the two greatest featherweights of all time in 1 year, absolutely insane. Now, the shot itself was beautiful from Ilia. I know some people would say, well, you know, if you're ranking the Erceg over Schnell knockout and Ribovic versus Terrence McKinney knockouts below because of the chins, maybe you should consider the Ilia Topuria Volkanovski knockout a little bit lower because Volk had just been knocked out. But nah. As I always say, whenever I talk about this knockout, and I refer to people really trying to tear it down to say that it was permissible for Volkanovski to get knocked out there because he had just been knocked out, right? I've heard that excuse many times, especially from the Lucas Tracy's of the world, but I just feel like if you watch that shot land, how clean Ilia Topuria lands it. And considering what we've seen from Ilia Topuria since then, knocking out Max Holloway for the first time, it's very fair to assume that that right hand would have put out any version of Volkanovski. Did not matter. This is an A tier one, absolutely 100%. Then we get into Joe Pyfer against Marc-Andre Barriault. I'll just put it in D tier right away. Another brutal knockout over a Canadian. Lands a nice right hand behind the ear. And I think it was just one more uppercut that completely slumped Marc-Andre Barriault. Extremely, extremely brutal. Yeah, great knockout, but for me, just simple right hand. And also Marc-Andre Barriault got knocked out multiple times in 2024. He lost his chin this year. But I think this was the fight that ultimately took his chin. But yeah, Joe Pyfer, he hits like a Ford Escort apparently, and he proved it there. So there you go. Then we get Michael Johnson versus Ottoman Azaitar. That right hook was nasty, man. Right on the chin. Just swung it so wildly, but the speed of the hands of Michael Johnson, it was such a beautiful thing to see him really reprise that again and display it, man. This hand speed is crazy, and the power. Just a very wildly swung right hand, though, but the way it landed, dude, just slumped fucking Ottoman Azaitar. I can't really decide where to put it, but I think, just a simple knockout. Ottoman Azaitar, he's fallen off quite a bit, but it was just great to see Michael Johnson get another knockout win like that. So I'll put that one in C tier. The nature of it, like the opponent's not the highest level, but the speed and the brutality, the ground and pound, right, that he followed up with, brutal as all hell. Then we get Whitaker versus Aliskerov, and all the clowns who counted out Whitaker in this one, picking Aliskerov, absolute clowns. I'm glad that Whitaker made it look so easy, right? The right hand over the top, throws his signature 1-2 high kick, doesn't really land it, but then follows up with the uppercut, puts Aliskerov down. Beautiful, beautiful knockout, very high profile knockout as well, but for me, I think this one deserves to be about C tier because I don't even think Aliskerov should have been in the cage with Whitaker to begin with. It was always a mismatch for anyone who understood how high level Whitaker was. Then we get into Sharaputin Magomedov, another possible knockout of the year contender. Double spinning back fist is the only occasion where that's ever took place. I've never seen another example of that ever happening. So there's no other place to rank it other than A tier. Sharaputin Magomedov pulled off one of the craziest knockouts of all time. So, yeah, there you go. And this is another one that could challenge, just as far as the style of it, challenges Max Holloway's knockout over Justin Gaethje for being the knockout of the year. Then we get into Ming Shi's knockout over Feng Zhaocan, I believe is how you say the name. Correct me if I'm wrong here. But just brutal. Looked like we had seen our first fatality in the octagon. Took her so long to wake back up. The head kick, the setup, everything. Shit was brutal. It was brutal. One of the scariest knockouts in recent memory. I'm not too sure where to rank it, but I'm gonna rank it at B tier. I think the knockout itself is very impressive. Just a great high kick, although it has taken place in lower level MMA, I suppose, right? As far as the UFC caliber, lower level MMA. So I'll dock it a bit, but just the knockout itself was terrifying. It was. So the brutality factor of it, the fear factor of it has to bump it up a little bit, despite it just being, I guess, a relatively simple head kick. Then we get into Zhang Minyang with a beautiful 1-2-3, dude. Throws the 1-2, slips off, lands the left hook on the chin of Ribeiro, puts him down, ground and pound. Easy does it. I would say this one's an easy C tier. I'm very high on Zhang Minyang, so maybe I'm biased here, just even including it on this list to begin with. But I think it's one of the most beautiful combinations landed this year, and he scored a knockout with it. So there you go. Then we get into, oh boy, Myron Santos' knockout over Con Ofli. This was a beautiful shot, and I think I have to rank it in B tier. He was just styling on Con Ofli the entire fight. It was a masterclass of a performance. Would actually be considered on my list of best performances of the year. But then to cap it off with one of the most beautiful left hooks. I know I said that the Matt Schnell KO loss to Steve Erceg was an example of the most perfect left hook that you'll ever see. I would say Gabriel Santos is another one of those, right? The timing, everything about it, man. The torque, the power, the rotation, beautiful. Just the most beautiful shot. Slumps Con Ofli really bad. It was a brutal knockout and just completely dogged Con Ofli from beginning to end. And to cap it off with that shot, what a performance, what a knockout. B tier, absolutely. For me, it even pushes the boundaries of being A tier, just considering how much I love a good left hook like that. Then we have Bahamondes against Yagos, I believe this was. Just a beautiful left high kick. So perfect. Beat up Yagos for the entire fight leading up to it. And just the same thing I said with Gabriel Santos against Konofli, right? To cap off such a beautiful performance with a knockout like that, man, can't say anything else about it. It was just so impressive, and I will rank this one in C tier. Then we have Alex Pereira against Khalil Roundtree. So simple knockout, but it's similar to Manel Kape in the sense that they both just hit flow state and just beat up their opponents leading up to the knockout. The knockout itself is not super impressive. It's just double body shots, right? He was head hunting for the majority of time and then goes to the body, crumbles Khalil Roundtree. I would say the fact that it took place in a title fight also bumps it up a little bit too, and just the whole flow state, watching Alex Pereira enter flow state leading up to it, has to bump it up and give it quite a few points. But I will rank it in B tier to be very fair here. Then we get Mauricio Rufy versus Jamie Malarkey. Now I don't think that that they should have fought in the first place. Mauricio Rufy was always going to toy with Jamie Malarkey like this. Nice flying knee, couple of shots for good measure. I would say this one is deserving of I'll say D tier at the end of the day. I just think the opponent bumps it down a little bit, but the nature of the knockout, right, the style of it, it's just beautiful, and there's no denying that whatsoever. Then we get Cub Swanson with one of the most perfect right hands you will ever see from a 41-year-old Cub Swanson after going to war with Billy Quarantillo for 3 rounds. He lands the most beautiful right hand you'll ever see. Love it. C tier for me, but one of my favorite knockouts of the year, just in terms of the fact that it's a Cub Swanson, a complete warrior, a legend of the game, went to war in the potential last fight of his career and then caps it off with a beautiful knockout like that. Could not be happier for the guy, right? One of my favorite knockouts just for that reason alone. Then we get Marcus McGee's performance. I believe this is over Bolaños. If it's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this was against Bolaños. But another masterclass of a performance, capped off with a great finish. It wasn't the wheel kick that finished it in particular, but he lands it, follows up with a left hand, I believe, drops him pretty bad. Finished him standing, I think, but dude, the style behind it, the combinations. Marcus McGee is super legit in this fight. This performance, I think, reminded everyone of that. I'm gonna say C tier for that one. Then we get into Carlos Prates against Neil Magny. This one was weird. It was definitely weird, right? The left hand right behind the ear just brushes it. The power on Carlos Prates and the precision, dude. He's such a dangerous fighter. Although it's over Neil Magny, I never really rated Neil Magny, to be honest. In the main event, right, pretty high-profile knockout. And the fourth one he got this year, which is just so nuts. But you know what? I'm going to put it in C tier. It was almost like a phantom knockout. It looked like there was no contact even made. It looked like he used his chi to knock out Neil Magny. But yeah, the replays afterwards made it very clear that he landed just behind the ear. He kind of like grazed him, right? And to put him out like that, I don't know. I guess it's just the power, the otherworldly power of Carlos Prates. Yeah, man, Brazilian alcoholics just have different types of power, you know what I'm saying? And then we get Dustin Jacoby against Vitor Petrino, the absolute fraud check, and got fraud checked twice in 1 year. How you getting fraud checked? You're getting submitted in the first round by Anthony fucking Smith, and then you're getting slept by Dustin Jacoby. What a fucking right hand it was, though. Dude, this is a disgusting knockout. I'm gonna rank it in B tier. I love this knockout. I really do. It's just always great seeing fraud checks. I don't know. Just witnessing fraud checks in real time is just such a beautiful thing for me. And then we have Emil's knockout over Lee. Just blitzes him off the bat. I believe it happened within the first minute. As soon as they get into the pocket and one punch is thrown, they both just decide it's time to throw down, and Haider Emil just blitzes Lee and finishes him. Lands like a 25 punch combination to the face of Lee. It was ridiculous. It's the closest thing that I could think of to Vitor Belfort's knockout over Vanderlei Silva back in like UFC 4 or some shit like that. The most familiar knockout or the most similar knockout to that I've ever seen pretty much. This shit blew my mind. It made no sense. Just blitzed him, and I loved every second of it. Haider Emil came to bang and landed a great knockout. And then last but not least, we have Fares Ziem against Matt Frevola. The knee to the face. Somehow got his knee up that high. Landed it so clean on Matt Frevola and just slumped him really, really badly. I'm going to say this one deserves to be an A tier. It's a novelty. You don't really see knees landed in that type of situation at that range, right? Matt Frevola is pretty much standing completely straight up, and Faraz Diem somehow manages to land that knee. Clearly caught Matt Frevola off guard and put him out bad. This was a really brutal one. I would say one of the best knockouts of the year. And that does conclude my tier list ranking the best knockouts of 2024. As far as other potential knockouts of the year, the more I think about it, the more that it would simply just be dishonest if I moved Max Holloway over Justin Gaethje's knockout off of the top. Like, you can argue that it's not the most impressive shot ever landed, but in a BMF title fight, in the very last second, after he points to the ground and they have that beautiful exchange, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. As I said, like, the only ones I can even think of that even come close are Muslim Salikov's knockout over Sankanan, maybe Shara Putin's knockout over Petrosian, and Vinicius Oliveira's over Sopaj, maybe. I mean, yeah, they do come close, to be honest, but you just cannot top the moment. You cannot top the moment, circumstances, everything lined up to make this not only the greatest knockout of the year, but arguably the greatest of all time. So how can I knock it off there? I really just can't. I really cannot knock it out of that tier. This knockout owns that tier. This tier is made for Max Holloway's knockout over Justin Gaethje, and I guess I'm presuming, right, assuming that I will hear no arguments about that. But please let me know in the comment section below what you thought about the rankings, what your favorite knockouts of the year are, your top 5, top 10, whatever. As always, I appreciate all your thoughts, and I appreciate you watching the video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.